Meet Nikola Tesla, a Croatian genius born in 1856, dreamed of harnessing electricity to light the world. With his Tesla coil, he battled rivals like Edison and Doubt in New York. Alongside young scientist Anna, Tesla's dazzling Central Park demo proved his wireless vision, sparking a revolution that still shines today. Imagine a world lit by lightning, where power flows without wires and voices travel across oceans. Nikola Tesla, a dreamer with sparks in his soul, fights to make his Tesla coil, a machine of wild blue energy, change everything. From a small village to New York's bustling streets, he battles rivals, doubt, and empty pockets, with a young scientist named Anna by his side. Tesla's final dazzling demonstration in Central Park lights up the future, proving his coil's magic. This is the story of a genius whose ideas, though mocked, sparked a wireless revolution that still shines today. Chapter 1. The Spark of Genius. The night was alive with stars, twinkling like tiny candles above the small village of Smiljan, Croatia, in 1856. A boy named Nikola Tesla, barely 10 years old, sat on a grassy hill, his dark eyes wide with wonder. The air buzzed with the hum of summer crickets. But Nikola's mind was far away, chasing ideas bigger than the sky itself. He wasn't like other kids who played tag or tossed stones by the river. No, Nikola's heart raced for something else. Electricity, the mysterious force that seemed to dance in the world around him. His father, Milutin, was a priest, always reading heavy books filled with big words. His mother, Juka, was different. She didn't read much, but her hands were magic. She fixed broken tools, spun wool into thread, and invented little gadgets to make chores easier. Nikola loved watching her work, her fingers quick and clever. "You see, Nico," she'd say, smiling, "the world is full of problems, but every problem has a fix if you think hard enough." Those words stuck with him, like seeds planted in his brain. Nikola's first brush with electricity came by accident. One chilly evening, he was petting his cat, Macaque, by the fire. The cat's fur crackled, and tiny sparks jumped from his hand to Macaque's back, glowing like fireflies. Nikola froze, his heart pounding. "Mother!" he shouted, running to Juka. "What's this? It's like lightning, but small." Juka laughed, her eyes warm. "That's electricity, my boy. It's in everything, waiting to be understood." From that moment, Nikola was hooked. He wanted to know everything about this invisible power. School was a mixed bag for Nikola. He was skinny, with messy black hair and a quiet voice, which made him an easy target for bullies. They'd tease him for daydreaming, or reading instead of playing rough games. But Nikola didn't care much. His mind was too busy solving puzzles. Numbers were his friends. He could multiply big ones in his head faster than the teacher could check them. Science lessons were his favorite, especially when the teacher talked about magnets or energy. Nikola would sit up straight, his hands shooting up with questions. "Why does lightning strike? Can we catch it? Can we make it do things?" The teacher, a tired man with glasses, would sigh. "Slow down, Tesla. Some things are just mysteries." At home, Nikola turned his room into a tiny workshop. He collected bits of wire, old nails and broken clocks, trying to build something, anything, that could harness the sparks he'd seen. One day, he found a rusty hand-crank generator in the attic, a gift from a cousin who'd moved away. It was heavy, with a cracked wooden base, but to Nikola it was treasure. He spent hours turning the crank, watching a faint glow flicker in a glass bulb he'd wired to it. The light was weak, but to him it was a miracle. "I made light!" He whispered, grinning. That generator became his obsession. He'd stay up late, long after his parents thought he was asleep, sketching ideas for machines that could make electricity do amazing things. Nikola's imagination was wild. He didn't just want to make light bulbs glow. He dreamed of cities, lit up at night, machines that could talk across miles, and energy that flowed through the air like water. These weren't just kid dreams. They were plans, clear as pictures in his mind. He'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, seeing gears and wires move like a movie only he could watch. Sometimes the pictures were so real, he'd jump up and draw them, his pencil flying across scraps of paper. "One day," he promised himself, "I'll build these things." But life wasn't all sparks and dreams. When Nikola was 12, his older brother Dane died in an accident. Dane was the golden child, strong, smart, and loved by everyone. Nikola worshipped him, always trailing behind like a shadow. After Dane was gone, the house felt heavy, like the air itself was sad. Milutin grew stricter, pushing Nikola to become a priest like him. "It's a good life, Nikola," he'd say, his voice firm. "You'll help people. You'll have purpose." But Nikola's heart wasn't in it. He wanted to chase electricity, not sermons. Juka understood. She'd sneak him extra candles for his late-night experiments, whispering, "Follow your spark, Nico. It's what you're meant for." By the time Nikola was a teenager, his family had moved to a bigger town, Gospic. School got tougher, but Nikola shone brighter. He aced every test, especially in math and physics. His teachers started to notice, one even calling him a born inventor. That word, inventor, felt right. It was who Nikola was, deep in his bones. But money was tight. Milutin's small salary barely covered food and clothes, let alone books or tools for Nikola's experiments. Nikola didn't complain. He worked, odd jobs, fixing neighbors' broken lamps or cleaning stables, saving every coin for his projects. One day, a travelling science show came to Gospic. The tent was packed with curious townsfolk, all eager to see the wonders of electricity. Nikola squeezed to the front, his heart racing. The showman, a man with a twirly moustache, cranked a strange machine that spat blue sparks and made a glass tube glow, bright white. The crowd gasped, but Nikola leaned closer, his mind racing. "It's a coil," he whispered, piecing it together. "It's making high voltage." After the show, he cornered the showman, bombarding him with questions. How does it work? Can it send signals? Can it power a whole house? The man chuckled, patting Nikola's shoulder. "You've got a sharp mind, kid. Keep asking questions. Maybe you'll build something better." That night, Nikola couldn't sleep. The coil he'd seen was crude, but it was a start. He imagined improving it, making it stronger, smarter. He grabbed his notebook and sketched a machine with coils and wires, designed to push electricity farther than anyone had dreamed. "This is it," he thought. "This is my future." But Croatia was small, with no big labs or rich investors. If he wanted to make his ideas real, he'd need to go somewhere bigger, somewhere buzzing with possibility. At 17, Nikola got his chance. His father, though still hoping for a priest, agreed to send him to study engineering in Austria. It wasn't easy. Milutin had to borrow money, and Nikola promised to work hard. As he packed his small suitcase, Juka slipped a tiny wrench into his hand, one she'd used for her own inventions. "For luck," she said, her eyes shining. Nikola hugged her tight, his throat tight with gratitude. He was leaving home, but he was carrying his mother's belief in him. The train to Austria was slow. Chugging through snowy fields and dark forests, Nikola sat by the window, his breath fogging the glass. He was nervous but excited. Austria had universities, factories, and men who understood electricity. Maybe there he'd find the tools to build his dreams. He opened his notebook, now filled with drawings of coils, motors, and strange machines. One sketch stood out, a tall coil spitting lightning, powering a whole city without wires. It was crazy, impossible even. But Nikola smiled. Impossible is just a challenge, he thought. In Austria, Nikola threw himself into his studies. The Graz University of Technology was a new world, with lecture halls full of serious students and professors who spoke of energy like it was magic. Nikola soaked it up, staying late in the library, reading about magnets, currents, and the men who'd tamed them. But school wasn't enough. He wanted to experiment, to build. He found a job at a telegraph company, fixing wires and machines. The pay was small, but it gave him access to tools and a tiny corner to tinker. One night, in a dusty workshop, Nikola built his first real circuit. It was simple, just a battery, some wires, and a small coil he'd wound himself. When he flipped the switch, the coil hummed, and a faint spark jumped across a gap. It wasn't much, but to Nikola it was everything. He laughed, clapping his hands like a kid. "It works," he said to the empty room. That spark was proof. His ideas weren't just dreams. They could be real. But Austria was just a stepping stone. Nikola heard stories of America, a land of inventors and big ideas. Thomas Edison, the famous Wizard of Menlo Park, was lighting up cities with his bulbs. Nikola admired Edison's work, but thought he could do better. Edison used direct current, which was clunky and limited. Nikola believed in alternating current, a way to send electricity farther and cheaper. America, he decided, is where I'll make my mark. At 28, Nikola boarded a ship to New York. He had 4 cents in his pocket, a few books, and a head full of plans. The journey was rough, with stormy seas and crowded cabins, but Nikola barely noticed. He spent hours on deck staring at the horizon, imagining the machines he'd build. The Tesla Coil, though he didn't call it that yet, was taking shape in his mind. A machine to push electricity to its limits, to light the world and connect people like never before. When the ship docked in New York in 1884, Nikola stepped onto the bustling docks, his heart pounding. The city was loud, smoky, and alive, with horse carriages clattering and streetlights flickering. It was chaos, but to Nikola it was perfect. This was where his spark would grow, where his ideas would catch fire. He clutched his notebook, filled with sketches of coils and dreams, and took his first step into the unknown. "This is my chance," he thought. "I'll show the world what electricity can do." Little did he know, the road ahead would be tough, full of rivals, failures, and moments of doubt. But that night, as he walked through New York's crowded streets, Nikola Tesla felt unstoppable. His spark of genius, born on a hill in Smiljan, was ready to light the world. And the Tesla coil, still just a sketch in his notebook, was about to change everything. Chapter 2. A Vision of Light New York City. In 1884 was a beast of a place, all noise and hustle. Horse carriages rattled over cobblestone streets, and smoky air stung Nikola Tesla's nose as he stepped off the boat. He was 28, tall and thin, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to see right through things. In his pocket were 4 cents and a letter for Thomas Edison, the famous inventor everyone talked about. In his head, ideas so big they could light the world. Nikola wasn't here to follow. He was here to build something new, something no one had dreamed of before. The Tesla coil was still just a spark in his mind, but it was growing, and this city was where it would catch fire. Nikola's first days in New York were tough. The city was loud and crowded, nothing like the quiet hills of Smiljan or the orderly streets of Austria. He rented a tiny room in a boarding house, the kind of place where the walls were thin and the air smelled of cabbage. His bed creaked, and the single window looked out on a brick wall, but Nikola didn't care. He spent his days wandering, notebook in hand, sketching ideas as he walked. The streets were alive with energy, streetlights flickering, telegraph, wires humming, and factories puffing smoke. It was a city of machines, and Nikola felt right at home. His letter to Edison was his ticket to a job. Edison was the king of inventors, known for his light bulb and power stations. Nikola admired him, but he had his own ideas. Edison used direct current, or DC, to send electricity through wires. It worked, but it was clunky. DC couldn't travel far without losing power. Nikola believed in alternating current, or AC, which could zip electricity over long distances, cheap and easy. He'd been thinking about AC since his school days, in Austria, and now in New York. He was ready to make it real. Getting to Edison wasn't easy. Nikola showed up at Edison's office in Manhattan, a busy place with men in suits rushing around. He handed his letter to a grumpy clerk who barely looked at it. "Wait there," the clerk said, pointing to a hard bench. Nikola sat for hours, clutching his notebook, watching workers carry strange machines and glass bulbs. Finally, a man with a round face and messy hair appeared. Thomas Edison himself. He read the letter, squinting, then sized Nikola up. "You're the kid from Europe, huh? Know anything about electricity?" Nikola nodded, his voice steady. "I've built circuits. I understand currents, especially alternating ones." Edison snorted. "AC's dangerous. Stick to DC and maybe you'll last here." Nikola got the job, but it wasn't what he expected. Edison's workshop was a maze of wires, tools, and half-built machines. Nikola was put to work fixing generators, untangling wires, and cleaning up spills. It was grunt work, not the kind of inventing he'd dreamed of. Still, he soaked up everything. He watched Edison's team build power systems, studied their designs, and spotted flaws. At night, in his tiny room, he sketched better ways, motors, generators, and a strange coil that could push electricity to new heights. AC is the future, he told himself. I just need a chance to prove it. Edison was a hard boss. He worked his men late, barking orders and rarely smiling. Nikola didn't mind the hours. He loved the work. But Edison's stubborn love for DC frustrated him. One day, Nikola spoke up. They were testing a generator that kept breaking down, wasting power. "Sir," Nikola said, his accent thick but clear, "if we used alternating current, we could send power farther, with less loss." Edison's face turned red. "AC's a pipe dream, Tesla. It's unsafe and nobody wants it. Fix the machine and keep quiet." Nikola bit his tongue, but his mind raced. He wasn't here to fix Edison's mistakes forever. Despite the tension, Nikola shone. He fixed machines faster than anyone, often redesigning them to work better. His co-workers noticed. "That skinny guy's a wizard," one said, watching Nikola rewire a generator in half the usual time. Edison noticed too, though he didn't say much. One evening, he called Nikola over. "I've got a problem," Edison said, pointing to a stack of broken dynamos. "Fix these, and I'll pay you $50,000. Nikola's eyes widened. That was a fortune, enough to fund his own lab. "I'll do it," he said, already planning. For weeks, Nikola barely slept. He worked day and night, taking apart the dynamos, finding weak spots, and rebuilding them with clever tweaks. His hands were stained with grease, his eyes red from strain, but he didn't stop. When he finished, the dynamos ran smoother and stronger than ever. Nikola presented them to Edison, proud but exhausted. Edison clapped him on the back. "Good work, Tesla. But that 50,000? I was joking. You got a lesson in American business." Nikola's stomach sank. He'd been tricked. Anger burned in his chest, but he stayed calm. "I see," he said quietly, and walked away. That moment changed everything. Nikola knew he couldn't stay under Edison's thumb. He quit soon after, determined to go his own way. But New York was expensive, and without a job, Nikola struggled. His savings ran out and he took odd jobs, digging ditches, repairing lamps, anything to eat. The work was humiliating for a man who dreamed of changing the world, but Nikola never gave up. He carried his notebook everywhere, adding new sketches. A motor that ran on AC, a system to send power across cities, and that coil, always the coil, growing clearer in his mind. It wasn't just a machine, it was a key to a new kind of electricity, one that could light homes, power factories, and maybe even send energy through the air. One day, while digging a ditch in the rain, Nikola met a man named Alfred Brown. Brown was an engineer, older and kind, with a knack for spotting talent. He saw Nikola's muddy clothes, but also the fire in his eyes. "You don't look like a ditch digger," Brown said, offering him a dry spot under an awning. Nikola, tired but honest, told him everything. His time with Edison, his love for AC, his big ideas. Brown listened, nodding. "You need a lab," he said finally. "I know some investors. Let's talk." Brown introduced Nikola to a group of businessmen looking for the next big thing. Nikola didn't have much to show, just his notebook and a small model of an AC motor he'd built from scraps. But when he spoke, his passion lit up the room. He described a world where electricity flowed like water, cheap and available to everyone. He showed them his motor, which spun smoothly on AC, no clunky DC needed. The investors were impressed. One, a sharp-eyed man named Peck, leaned forward. "Can you build a whole system like this?" Nikola nodded. "Give me a workshop, and I'll show you." With their backing, Nikola got a small lab in Manhattan. It was a dusty room with creaky floors, but to him it was a palace. He filled it with wires, coils, and tools, working late into the night. His first goal was to perfect his AC system. He built motors and generators, testing them until they hummed just right. But the coil idea kept nagging him. He'd seen crude versions in Europe, machines that made sparks and glowed. What if he could make one better, stronger? What if it could do more than just dazzle a crowd? Nikola started experimenting. He wound coils of wire around wooden frames, connected them to batteries, and watched what happened. The first tries were messy. Sparks flew, wires burned, and once a small fire nearly ruined his desk. But Nikola learned fast. He tweaked the design, adding capacitors to store energy and switches to control the flow. One night, after weeks of failures, he flipped a switch, and his coil came alive. Blue sparks danced across the room, crackling like tiny lightning. The air buzzed, and a glass tube nearby glowed bright white. Nikola laughed, his tired face glowing in the light. "It works," he whispered. "It's alive." This was the start of the Tesla coil, though he didn't name it yet. It was more than a toy. It was a way to make high-voltage electricity, to push power to new limits. Nikola saw its potential, not just for lights or motors, but for something bigger. He imagined sending electricity without wires, powering homes miles away, even talking across oceans. It sounded crazy, but to Nikola, it was as clear as the sparks in his lab. His AC system was catching attention too. In 1888, a big company, Westinghouse, heard about Nikola's work. George Westinghouse, the owner, was a bold man who believed in AC. He visited Nikola's lab, watching the motors spin and the coils spark. "This is the future," Westinghouse said, shaking Nikola's hand. "Work with me and we'll beat Edison." Nikola agreed, signing a deal that gave him money and a bigger lab. For the first time, he felt like his dreams were within reach. But the coil stayed his secret passion. While he built AC systems for Westinghouse, he kept tinkering with his coil, making it stronger, more precise. He dreamed of using it to send energy through the air, not just wires. One night, alone in his lab, he held a glass tube near the coil. It glowed without being connected, powered by the invisible energy around it. Nikola's heart raced. "Wireless," he whispered. "It's possible." The world was starting to notice Nikola. Newspapers called him a young genius, and his AC motors were powering factories. But Nikola wasn't satisfied. The coil was his real vision, a machine that could change everything. He sketched bigger versions, ones that could light entire cities or send messages across the world. It was risky. Most people thought wireless power was a fantasy. Even Westinghouse, his biggest supporter, raised an eyebrow. "Focus on what we know works, Tesla," he advised. But Nikola couldn't stop. The coil was his spark, his dream, his revolution. As he worked, trouble was brewing. Edison, stung by AC's rise, was fighting back. He spread stories that AC was dangerous. even staging ugly stunts to scare people. Nikola knew the war of the currents was coming, and he'd be in the middle of it. But he wasn't afraid. With his coil humming and his mind buzzing, he felt ready. New York was just the start. The world was waiting, and Nikola Tesla was about to light it up. Chapter 3. The coil takes shape. Nikola Tesla's new lab in Manhattan was a world of wires and wonders. By 1888, at age 32, he was no longer the broke dreamer who'd arrived in New York with 4 cents. Thanks to his deal with George Westinghouse, he had money, tools, and a small team to help him build his alternating current AC systems. But Nikola's heart wasn't in the motors and generators everyone else cared about. It was in a strange machine, taking shape on his workbench, a tangle of coils, capacitors, and sparking dreams. This was the Tesla coil, and it was about to become real. The lab was a messy paradise. Wooden tables were littered with screws, glass tubes, and half-built circuits. The air smelled of burnt metal and oil, and a faint hum filled the room, like the buzz of a far-off storm. Nikola, tall and thin, moved through the chaos with focus, his dark eyes sharp. He wore a simple suit, sleeves rolled up, his hands stained with grease. His team, 3 young engineers hired by Westinghouse, watched him with a mix of awe and confusion. "What's that thing?" one asked, pointing to the coil. Nikola smiled, a rare spark of excitement. "It's the future," he said. "It'll make electricity dance." Nikola had been thinking about coils since his days in Austria, inspired by crude machines that made sparks and glowed. Those were toys, good for science shows, but not much else. Nikola wanted more. He wanted a coil that could create high-voltage electricity, strong enough to light cities or send power through the air. His early experiments in New York, back when he was scraping by, had shown him it was possible. Now, with a proper lab, he could build it right. The Tesla coil started as a simple idea: wind a wire around a core, connect it to a power source, and use a capacitor to store and release energy. When timed right, the coil would turn regular electricity into a high-voltage surge, creating sparks and a field of energy that could do amazing things. But simple didn't mean easy. Nikola's first tries were disasters. Sparks flew too wild, burning wires. Capacitors exploded, sending glass shards across the room. Once, a jolt shocked Nikola so hard he saw stars. His team laughed nervously, but Nikola just shook it off. "Phew! Failure teaches," he said, grabbing a new coil. He worked late, long after his team went home. The lab's single window showed a dark New York sky, but Nikola didn't notice. He was lost in his machine, tweaking wires and testing voltages. One night, after weeks of failures, he got it right. He flipped a switch, and the coil hummed, a deep, steady sound. Blue sparks shot from the top, crackling like tiny lightning. A glass tube nearby glowed bright, no wires needed. Nikola's heart raced. He held another tube in his hand, and it lit up too, powered by the coil's invisible energy. "Wireless," he whispered, grinning. "It's working." His team saw the coil in action the next day. "That's magic," one engineer said, watching sparks dance. Nikola shook his head. "Not magic, science. This coil can make electricity do things we've never seen. He explained his vision, a world where power didn't need wires, where coils could light homes, run machines, or even send messages across oceans. His team listened, half believing. It sounded crazy, but Nikola's passion made it feel possible. Westinghouse, his big supporter, wasn't so sure. George Westinghouse was a practical man, focused on selling AC systems to cities and factories. He visited the lab one afternoon, his moustache twitching as he watched the coil spark. "Impressive, Tesla," he said, "but what's it for? We need motors, not fireworks." Nikola tried to explain wireless power, global communication, but Westinghouse cut him off. "Stick to AC, that's what's paying for this lab." Nikola nodded, but inside he burned with frustration. The coil wasn't just a trick. It was a revolution. He'd prove it, no matter what. Nikola split his time between Westinghouse's projects and his coil. By day, he designed motors and generators, making AC better and cheaper. His work was winning the war of the currents against Thomas Edison, who still pushed direct current DC. Cities were choosing AC to light their streets, and Nikola's name was in the newspapers. The young wizard, they called him. But by night, the coil was his obsession. He built bigger versions, each one stronger. Sparks grew longer, some stretching a foot, lighting the lab in eerie blue. He added a metal sphere to the top, which made the sparks sharper, more controlled. One evening, Nikola tried something bold. He set up 2 coils across the room, 10 feet apart. If his idea worked, one coil could send energy to the other, no wires needed. He flipped the switch, and the first coil buzzed, spitting sparks. The second coil lit up, its own sparks dancing. A glass tube between them glowed bright. Nikola clapped, laughing like a kid. "It's talking," he said. The coils were sharing energy, proving wireless power was real. His team, working late, cheered. Even they couldn't deny it. This was big, but big ideas brought big problems. The coil was dangerous. Sparks could start fires, and the high voltage was deadly if mishandled. One night, a spark hit a wooden beam, leaving a black scorch mark. Nikola put out the smolder himself, heart pounding. He knew he had to be careful, but he couldn't stop. He added safety switches and grounded the coils, making them safer, but not tame. The coil was wild, like the lightning he'd watched as a boy in Smiljan. Money was another worry. Westinghouse's funds weren't endless, and Nikola's coil experiments were expensive. Wire, capacitors, and metal weren't cheap, and he kept breaking things in his tests. Westinghouse sent a letter, polite but firm. "Focus on AC systems, or we'll need to rethink our deal." Nikola felt the pressure, but he couldn't let the coil go. He started working in secret, hiding his coil tests from Westinghouse's visits. It felt dishonest dissent, but the coil was too important. Nikola's life outside the lab was lonely. He had no close friends, no family in America. His days were work. His nights were sketches and sparks. He ate simple meals, bread, cheese, apples, at his workbench, barely tasting them. Sometimes he'd walk New York's streets, watching people under the new electric lights his AC systems powered. It made him proud, but it wasn't enough. The coil promised more. A world where energy was free, where distance didn't matter. He'd walk back to his lab, renewed, ready to fight for his dream. One day, a letter arrived from a science group in London. They'd heard of Nikola's AC work and wanted him to speak at their conference. "Bring something new," the letter said. Nikola saw his chance. He'd show them the coil, not just as a spark machine, but as a step toward wireless power. He spent weeks preparing, building a portable coil he could carry. It was small but powerful, with a polished wood base and a shiny metal sphere. He practiced his speech, keeping it simple. "Electricity can be free. My coil is the start." The trip to London was a blur. The ship rocked on rough seas, but Nikola spent his time tweaking the coil, ignoring the waves. In London, the conference hall was packed with scientists in stiff suits, their faces serious. Nikola felt nervous, his hands sweaty as he set up his coil. When his turn came, he spoke clearly, his accent thick but his passion clear. "This coil," he said, "can send energy without wires. It's the key to a new world." He flipped the switch, and the coil sparked, lighting tubes across the stage. The crowd gasped, then clapped, some standing. For the first time, Nikola felt seen, not as Edison's rival or Westinghouse's engineer, but as a man with a vision. Back in New York, the London trip made Nikola famous. Newspapers wrote about Tesla's electric wonder, and investors started calling. One, a rich banker named Morgan, offered to fund a bigger lab. Nikola was thrilled but cautious. He needed freedom to work on the coil, not just AC. He took the money, promising results, and moved to a larger lab on Grand Street. It had high ceilings and thick walls, perfect for bigger coils and wilder sparks. In the new lab, Nikola pushed the coil further. He built one twice the size of his first, its sparks stretching 3 feet. The hum was louder, the light brighter. He tested wireless power over longer distances, lighting tubes 20 feet away. Each success fueled his dreams. He sketched a giant coil, one that could power a city or send signals across the world. But he knew it would take time, money, and trust, things he didn't have much of. As 1889 began, Nikola stood at a crossroads. His AC systems were winning, but the coil was his true love. Westinghouse wanted practical machines, investors wanted profits, and the world wanted safe, simple power. Nikola wanted more. A revolution. The coil was ready, sparking and alive, but the world wasn't. He'd have to fight for it, against doubters, rivals, and his own limits. In his quiet lab, surrounded by humming coils, Nikola made a promise. "I'll make them see," he whispered. "The coil will change everything." Chapter 4. Rivals and Resistance. Nikola Tesla's lab on Grand Street buzzed with energy in 1889, a tangle of wires and dreams. At 33, Nikola was no longer the unknown dreamer who'd landed in New York. His alternating current, AC, systems were lighting cities, and his Tesla coil, now sparking with fierce blue lightning, was his secret pride. But fame brought trouble. The war of the currents was heating up, and Nikola was caught in a storm of rivals, doubters, and his own stubborn hopes. The coil was his future, but the present was a fight. The lab was Nikola's world. Tall windows let in grey city light, and tables groaned under coils, capacitors, and glass tubes. The air crackled with the sharp smell of ozone, and the coil's hum was a constant song. Nikola worked alone most nights. His thin frame bent over his machines, tweaking wires with steady hands. His suits were wrinkled, his hair messy, but his eyes burned with focus. The coil was growing stronger. Sparks now stretched 4 feet, lighting tubes across the room without wires. Nikola saw a world powered by these sparks, but others saw only danger. Thomas Edison, Nikola's old boss, was the biggest threat. Edison's direct current DC powered parts of New York, but AC was winning. Cities like Chicago wanted Nikola's system because it sent power farther, cheaper. Edison wasn't happy. He was a stubborn man, with a round face and a temper, and he saw AC as a personal attack. In his Menlo Park lab, he fought back, not with better machines, but with fear. He spread stories that AC was deadly, calling it a killer current. Nikola read the headlines and shook his head. Lies, he muttered. Science will win. Edison's tricks got uglier. He hired a man to stage public stunts, electrocuting stray dogs, and even a horse with AC to scare people. Crowds gasped, and newspapers ate it up. "Is this the future of electricity?" one headline screamed. Nikola felt sick reading it. He knew AC could be safe. His systems were designed with care. But Edison's lies were loud. George Westinghouse, Nikola's partner, was furious. "We'll fight this in court," he told Nikola, his voice sharp. "Keep building. Show the world AC works." Nikola nodded, but the attacks stung. He wasn't just fighting for AC. He was fighting for his coil, his dream of wireless power. Money was another enemy. Westinghouse's company was strong, but Edison's stunts hurt sales. Investors got nervous, and Nikola's lab wasn't cheap. Coils needed copper wire, glass and steel, and every test burned through cash. One day, a letter arrived from Westinghouse. "Focus on motors, Tesla. The coil's a distraction." Nikola's stomach twisted. He hid his coil work, setting it up in a corner behind crates, testing it only at night. It felt wrong, but he couldn't stop. The coil was too important, its sparks too alive. Nikola's rivals weren't just outside. His own team, 3 engineers who helped with AC, started to doubt him. They admired his genius, but whispered when he wasn't looking. "He's obsessed with that coil," one said, watching Nikola tweak it for hours. "It's a toy, not a business." Nikola overheard and felt a pang. He tried explaining wireless energy, global signals, but their eyes glazed over. "Stick to what sells," they said. Nikola smiled tightly and turned back to his work. He didn't need their belief, but it hurt to feel alone. The scientific world was no kinder. Nikola's London speech had made him famous, but fame brought skeptics. At a science club in New York, he showed his coil to a room of professors and engineers. The sparks dazzled, lighting tubes 20 feet away. The crowd clapped, but questions were sharp. "How's it practical?" one man asked. "Can it power a factory?" another pressed. Nikola explained his vision: energy through the air, free for all. But the room grew quiet. An older scientist, with a grey beard, spoke up. "It's a fine show, Mr. Tesla, but it's fantasy. Wires work. Why change?" Nikola's face burned, but he stayed calm. "Wires limit us," he said. "My coil will set us free." The man snorted, and others nodded. Nikola left feeling heavy. The world wasn't ready. Money troubles grew worse. J.P. Morgan, the banker funding Nikola's lab, sent a man to check on progress. The man, in a stiff suit, watched the coil spark and frowned. "This isn't what we paid for," he said. "We want power stations, not circus tricks." Nikola tried to explain, but the man cut him off. "Results, Tesla, or the money stops." Nikola nodded, his jaw tight. That night, he worked until dawn, pushing the coil to new limits. Sparks hit 5 feet, and a glass tube glowed across the lab. It was beautiful, but it wasn't enough. He needed a big win, something to silence the doubters. Edison's attacks got personal. A newspaper ran a cartoon of Nikola as a mad scientist, hair wild, holding a sparking coil labelled danger. Nikola laughed it off, but it stung. He wasn't mad, he was right. He wrote letters to editors explaining AC's safety and the coil's potential, but few listened. Edison had the louder voice, the bigger name. Nikola felt the weight of it all. Rivals, skeptics, and his own burning need to prove himself. He barely slept, eating apples and bread at his workbench, his thin frame thinner. One night, a small victory came. A factory in Pittsburgh, powered by Nikola's AC, ran smoother than any DC system. Westinghouse sent a telegram. "Good work, Tesla. We're winning." Nikola smiled, but his mind was on the coil. He set up a new test, linking 2 coils 30 feet apart. When he flipped the switch, energy jumped between them, lighting tubes in a bright arc. Nikola clapped, alone in the lab. "It's real," he whispered. "Wireless is real." But victories were fleeting. The next day, a bill arrived for unpaid copper wire. Nikola paid it with his last coins, his heart sinking. His loneliness grew. New York was full of people, but Nikola felt apart. He had no family here, no close friends. His team respected him, but kept their distance, wary of his late-night coil obsession. He walked the city sometimes, watching families laugh under AC-powered streetlights. It warmed him, knowing his work helped, but it wasn't enough. He wanted the coil to change lives, not just light bulbs. Back in his lab, he'd sketch giant coils, ones that could power cities or talk across oceans. Soon, he promised. Himself. A new rival appeared. Guglielmo Marconi, a young Italian working on wireless telegraphy. Marconi's machines sent Morse code through the air, using ideas Nikola had shared in speeches. Nikola didn't mind at first. Progress was progress. But Marconi got the credit, the investors, the praise. Newspapers called him the radio man, while Nikola's coil was still a curiosity. Nikola felt a stab of jealousy, but pushed it down. Let him have his wires, he thought. My coil will do more. The pressure built. Westinghouse's company hit a rough patch, losing contracts to Edison's scare tactics. Nikola offered to tear up his royalty deal, saving Westinghouse millions. "Build AC," he told George. "I'll manage." It was a bold move, but it left Nikola broke again. He sold some patents to Morgan, promising practical AC systems, but sneaked coil work into his budget. It was risky, but the coil was his heart. One evening, Nikola got a break. A science fair in Chicago invited him to show his coil. It wasn't a big stage, but it was a chance. He built a new coil, sleek and powerful, with sparks that danced like fire. At the fair, a crowd gathered. Kids, parents, engineers. Nikolai spoke simply. This coil sends energy through the air. One day, it'll light your homes. He flipped the switch, and sparks flew, lighting tubes in a dazzling show. Kids cheered. Adults gasped. For a moment, Nikola felt hope. A reporter scribbled notes, and a few businessmen asked questions. "Keep going, Tesla," one said. "This could be something." Back in the lab, Nikola rode the high. He pushed the coil harder, testing bigger sparks, longer distances. One test sent energy 40 feet, a record. But danger lurked. A spark hit a water pipe, sending a shock through the lab. Nikola cut the power just in time, his hands shaking. He knew the coil was wild, hard to control. If he wanted the world to believe, he'd need to tame it, and fast. As 1890 loomed, Nikola faced a choice. Edison's lies, Marconi's rise, and Westinghouse's struggles were closing in. Money was tight, skeptics were loud, and his team was drifting. The coil was his dream, but it was also his burden. He could play it safe, focus on AC, and win the current war. Or he could risk everything for the coil, for a wireless future no one else saw. In his quiet lab, sparks dancing, Nikola made his choice. "The coil," he whispered. "It's worth it." The fight was on, and Nikola Tesla was ready to face it all. Chapter 5. The Colorado Springs Breakthrough. In 1899, Nikola Tesla stood at a crossroads. At 43, he was a name in New York. His alternating current, AC systems lighting cities, and winning the war of the currents against Thomas Edison. But his heart belonged to the Tesla coil, a machine of sparks and dreams that promised wireless power and global communication. New York's crowded streets and skeptical investors were holding him back. He needed space, silence, and a place to push his coil to its limits. That place was Colorado Springs, a dusty town in the shadow of the Rockies. Nikola packed his lab and headed west, chasing a breakthrough that could change the world. Colorado Springs was a shock after New York. The air was dry, the streets wide and quiet, and the sky stretched endless above. Nikola rented a small lab on the edge of town, a wooden barn with a high roof and plenty of room for his machines. He arrived with crates of wires, coils, and capacitors, his thin frame buzzing with energy. His dark eyes gleamed as he unpacked, already seeing sparks in his mind. "This is it," he told himself. "Here, the coil will shine." The lab was simple but perfect. Nikola set up his biggest Tesla coil yet, a towering beast with a thick coil of copper wire and a metal sphere on top, 10 feet tall. It dwarfed the tables of tools and glass tubes around it. The barn's walls were sturdy, good for containing sparks, and the open fields outside meant no neighbors to complain about noise or light. Nikola hired a helper, a local man named Fritz, who was quiet but handy with a wrench. "What's this thing do?" Fritz asked, eyeing the coil. Nikola smiled. "It talks to the sky," he said. Fritz raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. Nikola's goal was bold. Prove the Tesla coil could send energy and signals without wires, not just across a room, but across miles. He believed the Earth itself could carry electricity like a giant wire if he tuned his coil right. In New York, he'd sent power 40 feet. In Colorado, he wanted hundreds, maybe thousands. It sounded crazy, but Nikola's mind was a map of numbers and pictures, every detail clear. He sketched giant coils in his notebook, ones that could light towns or send messages to Europe. The world's ready, he thought. I just need to show them. Work began fast. By day, Nikola and Fritz built the coil circuits, wiring capacitors and grounding rods deep into the rocky soil. By night, Nikola tested alone under the stars. The first try was a mess. The coil hummed, but sparks flew wild, scorching the barn's roof. Nikola laughed, brushing ash from his suit. "Too much power," he said, tweaking the design. He added a bigger capacitor and a stronger ground, learning with every failure. Fritz watched, amazed. "You're not scared of this thing?" asked. Nikola shook his head. "It's not danger, it's potential." Weeks passed, and the coil improved. Sparks stretched 15 feet, bright as lightning, and the hum shook the barn. Nikola set up a second coil 50 feet away, outside, in a field. When he powered the main coil, the second one sparked, lighting tubes without a single wire. Nikola clapped, his face glowing in the blue light. "It's working!" he shouted to no one. He pushed further, moving the second coil 100 feet, then 200. Each time it lit up, proving energy could travel. Nikola's heart raced. This wasn't just a lab trick, it was the start of wireless power. But the coil did more than send energy. One stormy night, Nikola noticed something strange. As thunder rolled, the coil's sparks changed, pulsing in time with the lightning. He grabbed a meter and saw it. The coil was picking up signals from the storm, like an antenna. Nikola's mind spun. If it could hear lightning, could it hear other signals? Could it send them? He stayed up all night, wiring a simple receiver to the coil. By dawn, he'd caught faint electrical waves from miles away. "Communication," he whispered. "The coil can talk." This was huge. Nikola saw a world where coils linked cities, sending messages instantly. No telegraph wires, no delays. He tested day and night, tuning the coil to catch and send signals. One evening, he sent a pulse from his main coil and picked it up on a receiver half a mile away. It was weak but clear, a dot-dot-dash in Morse code. Nikola grinned, scribbling. Notes. "Global communication," he wrote. "The Earth is a conductor." He imagined coils everywhere, connecting people across oceans. It was his old dream, clearer than ever. But Colorado Springs wasn't all triumphs. The town's power station, which Nikola tapped for his tests, groaned under his coil's hunger. One night, he pushed too hard, and the coil sucked so much electricity, it fried the station's generator. Lights went out across town, and angry workers banged on Nikola's door. "What are you doing in there?" one shouted. Nikola, calm but embarrassed, promised to fix it. He spent his own money on a new generator, and the town forgave him. Barely. Fritz chuckled. "Your trouble, Mr. Tesla." Nikola shrugged. Progress is messy. Money was a bigger problem. Nikola's funds, from J.P. Morgan and Westinghouse, were running low. Colorado was expensive. Shipping crates, buying parts, paying Fritz. Letters from New York arrived, sharp and demanding. Morgan's man wrote, "Show results or we're done." Westinghouse was kinder but firm. AC first, Tesla. The coil's a risk. Nikola felt the squeeze. He wrote back, promising AC profits, but kept his coil work secret. It was his lifeline, his reason to keep going. The townsfolk were another challenge. At first they ignored Nikola's barn, but the coil's nightly light shows, flashes of blue and purple, drew crowds. Kids snuck close, daring each other to touch the fence. Adults whispered about the mad scientist making lightning. One preacher called Nikola's work unnatural, scaring some locals. Nikola didn't care much, but it made things lonely. Fritz was his only friend, and even he kept his distance outside work. Nikola ate alone, bread and cheese by lamplight, sketching coils to keep his spirits up. Despite the odds, Nikola pushed on. He built a bigger coil, 20 feet tall, with sparks that hit 30 feet. The barn shook, and the air buzzed like a swarm of bees. He tested wireless power over a mile, lighting a small bulb in a field. It was faint but real, proof his ideas worked. He sent signals too, catching them 2 miles away. Each test was a step toward his dream. A world of free energy and instant communication. But the bigger the coil, the bigger the risks. One spark started a grass fire, and Nikola and Fritz stomped it out, coughing in the smoke. "Careful, boss," Fritz said. Nikola nodded, but his mind was already on the next test. Nikola's notebook filled with plans. He sketched a giant coil, 50 feet tall, that could power a city or talk to Europe. He called it the magnifying transmitter, a supercharged Tesla coil. It would need a huge lab, more money than he had, but Nikola believed. He wrote to Morgan, asking for funds to build it. "This will change everything," he promised. Morgan's reply was cold. "Prove it first." Nikola gritted his teeth. He'd prove it, no matter what. One night, Nikola tried his boldest test. He set up a receiver 5 miles from the lab, in a rocky valley. If the coil could send a signal that far, it would silence the doubters. He powered the coil to its max, the barn glowing like a star. Sparks flew 40 feet, and the hum was deafening. Miles away, the receiver caught a faint pulse. ... Nikola whooped, dancing in the lab. "It's real!" he shouted. He wrote it all down, every detail, knowing this was his breakthrough. Wireless power and signals across miles using the Earth itself, but the victory came at a cost. The test burned out the coil's main capacitor, a pricey piece. Nikola had no money to replace it. He wired Morgan for help, but the reply was silence. Westinghouse sent a small sum with a note. "Come back to New York. Focus on AC." Nikola felt trapped. Colorado had given him answers, but it was draining his funds and his time. He looked at his coil, silent without its capacitor, and made a choice. "1 more month," he told Fritz. "Then we go back." As 1900 neared, Nikola prepared to leave. He packed his notes, sketches, and dreams, knowing Colorado had changed him. The coil wasn't a toy anymore. It was a machine that could talk to the world. He'd sent power and signals miles, proved the Earth could carry energy. But the world wasn't ready. Investors wanted safe bets, not lightning. Rivals like Marconi were stealing his thunder, claiming wireless for themselves. Nikola didn't care about fame. but he needed money to keep going. On his last night in Colorado, Nikola stood outside, watching a storm roll over the mountains. Lightning flashed, and his coil, even broken, seemed to hum in reply. He felt close to his boyhood self, the kid who'd seen sparks in his cat's fur. "I'm not done," he whispered. Back in New York, he'd fight for the coil, for the magnifying transmitter, for a wireless world. The breakthrough was real, but the battle was just beginning. With his notebook under his arm, Nikola Tesla turned from the storm, ready to face what came next. Chapter 6. The World Watches Nikola Tesla returned to New York in 1900, his mind buzzing from his Colorado Springs breakthroughs. At 44, he was a tall, thin figure with sharp eyes and a reputation as the Wizard of Electricity. Alternating current AC systems powered cities. But his Tesla coil, now a towering machine of sparks and wireless dreams, was his true passion. Colorado had proven the coil could send power and signals miles without wires, using the earth itself. Now, back in the noisy, smoky city, Nikola was ready to show the world. But fame brought pressure, and the world's eyes were not always kind. Nikola's new lab on Houston Street was bigger than his old one, with high ceilings and thick walls to hold the coil's wild energy. Crates from Colorado filled the space. Coils, capacitors, and notebooks stuffed with sketches. The air smelled of metal and ozone, and a low hum greeted Nikola each morning. He unpacked his magnifying transmitter, the supercharged coil from Colorado, and set it up with care. Its copper wires gleamed, and its metal sphere shone like a small moon. "This is it," Nikola told himself, brushing dust from his suit. "This will make them believe." His first chance came fast. The American Institute of Electrical Engineers invited him to demonstrate his coil at a big science expo in New York. It was a chance to reach scientists, investors, and the public, not just with AC, but with his wireless vision. Nikola worked day and night, building a portable coil for the show. It was smaller than the magnifying transmitter, but powerful, with sparks that could light tubes across a stage. He practiced his speech, keeping it simple. "My coil sends energy through the air. It's the future of power and communication." He wanted the world to see what he saw, a world without wires, connected by coils. The expo was a whirlwind. Madison Square Garden buzzed with crowds, their voices echoing under the huge roof. Booths showed off new machines, electric fans, telegraph, systems, even early telephones. Nikola's setup was simple: a wooden table, his coil, and a dozen glass tubes. He wore a crisp suit, his hair neat, but his hands shook with nerves. The crowd was a mix: kids with wide eyes, businessmen in stiff hats, and scientists with notepads. Nikola took a deep breath and began. "Electricity doesn't need wires," he said, his accent thick but clear. "Watch!" He flipped the switch, and the coil roared to life. Sparks flew, blue and bright, stretching 6 feet. The crowd gasped as glass tubes lit up, some held by Nikola, others across the stage, glowing without connections. He walked through the sparks, untouched, his face calm. "This is wireless power," he said, holding a glowing tube. "One day it will light your homes, send messages across oceans." The crowd cheered, kids clapping, adults whispering. A reporter scribbled furiously, and a scientist nodded, impressed. For a moment, Nikola felt unstoppable. The world was watching, and they loved it. Newspapers went wild. "Tesla's electric magic," one headline shouted. "The man who tames lightning," said another. Reporters crowded his lab, begging for interviews. Nikola was shy but polite, explaining his coil's potential. Free energy, global signals. The public ate it up, calling him a genius, a wizard. Letters poured in, some from kids asking if he could make lightning at home, others from investors offering money. Nikola's fame soared, and for the first time he felt the world might understand his dreams. But fame had a dark side. Investors like J.P. Morgan, who'd funded his lab, wanted fast results, not dreams. Morgan visited after the expo, his cold eyes scanning the coil. "Impressive show, Tesla," he said. "But where's the profit? Can this power a factory tomorrow?" Nikola tried to explain. Wireless needed time, research. But Morgan cut him off. "Time is money. Deliver or I'm out." Nikola nodded, his stomach tight. He needed Morgan's cash, but the coil wasn't ready for factories. It was a vision, not a product. George Westinghouse, his old partner, was kinder but just as practical. AC was making Westinghouse rich, but Nikola's coil worried him. "It's a risk," he told Nikola over lunch, his moustache twitching. "Focus on AC, the coil's scaring people." Nikola felt the sting. Scaring people? His coil was hope, not fear. But he saw Westinghouse's point. Edison's old lies about AC's danger still lingered, and a sparking coil didn't help. Nikola promised to prioritize AC, but at night he worked on the coil, hiding it from visitors. The scientific world was tougher. At a lecture for the New York Academy of Sciences, Nikola showed his coil to a room of professors. The sparks dazzled and tubes glowed, but questions were sharp. "How do you control it?" one asked. "What's the efficiency?" Another pressed. Nikola answered calmly. "Tuning circuits grounding the earth." But some scoffed. "It's a toy," a grey-haired scientist said. "Wires are reliable. This is a fantasy." Nikola's face burned, but he held his tongue. "They'll see," he thought. "One day they'll see." Rivals added to the pressure. Guglielmo Marconi, the young Italian, was making waves with his wireless telegraph, sending Morse code across the Atlantic. Newspapers called Marconi a hero. But Nikola knew the truth. Marconi's system used ideas Nikola had shared years ago. He didn't grudge Marconi's success. Progress was good, but it hurt to see his own work ignored. "My coil does more," Nikola muttered, tweaking its circuits. Marconi sent dots and dashes. Nikola dreamed of voices, power, a whole world connected. The public's love was fickle too. After the expo, crowds flocked to Nikola's lab, expecting more magic. He gave small demos, lighting tubes and sparking the coil, but some left bored. "Where's the big show?" one man grumbled. Nikola tried bigger sparks, but a misfire scorched a wall, scaring visitors. Rumors spread. The coil was dangerous. Tesla was reckless. A local paper ran a cartoon of Nikola as a wild-haired wizard, his coil exploding. Nikola laughed, but it stung. He wasn't a showman. He was a scientist. Money troubles loomed. The coil's tests were expensive. Copper wire, capacitors, and repairs ate his funds. Morgan sent less cash, and Westinghouse's payments slowed as AC faced new competition. Nikola sold some AC patents to keep going, but it wasn't enough. Bills piled up, and his lab's rent was late. He ate cheap meals, bread, apples, tea, working by candlelight to save power. Just a little longer, he told himself, sketching, a giant coil to power cities. But time was slipping. Loneliness crept in. Nikola had no family in New York, no close friends. His lab was his home, his coil his companion. He walked the city at night, watching AC streetlights glow. Proud but alone, people recognized him now, whispering, "That's Tesla." But he kept his head down. Fame was nice, but it didn't fill the quiet. He wrote letters to his mother, Juka, back in Croatia, promising to visit soon. "The coil is working," he wrote. "You'd love its sparks." Her replies, warm and proud, kept him going. A new chance came in 1901. A World's Fair in Buffalo invited Nikola to show his coil. It was bigger than the New York Expo, with thousands expected. Nikola saw a way to win back Morgan, Westinghouse, and the skeptics. He built a new coil, sleek and powerful, with sparks that hit 8 feet. He planned a bold demo, light 100 tubes wirelessly across a huge stage and send a signal to a receiver a mile away. "This will show them," he told his assistant, a young man named Sam. Sam, loyal but nervous, helped polish the coil. "Hope it doesn't burn the place down," he joked. Nikola smiled. "It won't." The fair was a spectacle. Buffalo's fairgrounds glowed with electric lights, and crowds marveled at new inventions. Cars, radios, even moving pictures. Nikola's booth was a hit. On opening day, he faced a sea of faces. Kids, scientists, rich men like Morgan in the front row. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "This coil is the future," he said. "Watch!" He flipped the switch, and the coil roared. Sparks flew, bright as a storm, and 100 tubes lit up, glowing red, white, blue. The crowd cheered, stunned. Nikola signaled Sam, who stood a mile away with a receiver. A light blinked. Dot, dot, dot. The signal worked. The crowd roared louder, and even Morgan clapped, his face surprised. Newspapers called it a triumph. "Tesla's wireless wonder," one shouted. Investors lined up, and Morgan promised more funds. Westinghouse sent a telegram. "Well done! Keep it practical." Nikola felt alive, his dreams close. But the coil wasn't perfect. It was hard to control, and scaling it for cities would take years. Skeptics still grumbled, and Marconi's radio stole headlines. Nikola didn't care. The world had seen his coil, and they'd cheered. It was enough, for now. Back in his lab, Nikola pushed harder. He tested bigger sparks, longer signals, dreaming of a global network of coils. But costs grew, and Morgan's patience thinned. "Show me profit," he wrote. Nikola sketched his giant coil, the Wardenclyffe Tower, a project to send power and signals worldwide. If Morgan funded it, the world would change. But doubts lingered. The fair had been a win, but rivals, money woes, and a fickle public loomed. Nikola looked at his coil, sparking in the dark, and made a vow. "I'll keep going," he whispered. "The world's watching, and I'm not done." Chapter 7. Shadows of doubt. In 1901, Nikola Tesla stood at the peak of his fame, but cracks were forming. At 45, he was the wizard of electricity, his alternating current, AC systems lighting cities, and his Tesla coil dazzling crowds with wireless sparks. His Buffalo World's Fair demo, lighting 100 tubes and sending signals a mile, had won cheers and promises of money from J.P. Morgan. Nikola dreamed of Wardenclyffe Tower, a giant coil to send power and messages worldwide. But New York's hustle, greedy investors, and his own relentless drive were pulling him into a storm. Doubt, once a whisper, was growing loud. Nikola's Houston Street lab was a fortress of ideas, its high walls humming with the coil's energy. Sparks lit the air, and glass tubes glowed in eerie colours. Nikola, thinner than ever, worked alone most nights, his suit wrinkled, his hands stained with grease. His dark eyes, once bright, now carried shadows. The coil was his heart, but the world wanted more than sparks. They wanted profit, safety, results. Nikola felt the weight, and for the first time he questioned himself. Wardenclyffe was his big plan. He'd sketched a tower, 187 feet tall, topped with a huge Tesla coil to send wireless power and signals across the globe. It would be his legacy, proof the coil wasn't just a show. Morgan had given $150,000 to start, and Nikola bought land on Long Island, a quiet spot called Shoreham. In 1901, workers began building, a steel frame rising from the earth, a brick lab nearby. Nikola visited often, his heart racing as the tower took shape. "This will change everything," he told his new assistant George, a young engineer with a quick smile. George nodded, but his eyes showed worry. "It's big, Mr. Tesla. Can we afford it?" Money was the first shadow. Wardenclyffe was a monster, eating funds faster than Nikola expected. Steel, copper, and labour weren't cheap, and Morgan's cash wasn't endless. Nikola wrote to him, asking for more, his letters full of passion. "Wardenclyffe will power the world, send voices across oceans." Morgan's replies grew cold. "Show me results first," he wrote. Nikola felt the eye sting. He'd shown results, Colorado's signals, Buffalo's lights. But Morgan wanted dollars, not dreams. Nikola sold more AC patents, scraping by, but bills piled up. His lab's rent was late, and he ate bread and tea to save coins. Investors weren't the only problem. The public, once wild for Nikola's electric magic, was losing interest. His Buffalo demo was old news, and Guglielmo Marconi's radio was stealing the spotlight. Marconi sent Morse code across the Atlantic in 1901, and newspapers called him the King of Wireless. Nikola knew Marconi used his ideas, patents he'd filed years ago, but the world didn't care. "Tesla's coils are toys," one article said. "Marconi's radio is practical." Nikola's jaw tightened. His coil could do more. His power, not just signals, but no one listened. Scientists were harsher. At a lecture in Philadelphia, Nikola showed his coil to a room of professors. Sparks flew, tubes glowed, and he spoke of Wardenclyffe's promise. Free, energy, global communication. The crowd clapped, but questions cut deep. "How do you pay for it?" one asked. "What's the efficiency?" another pressed. A scientist with a sour face stood. Wireless power is a fantasy, Tesla. Wires work fine. Nikola stayed calm, explaining Earth's conductivity, but the room felt cold. They don't see, he muttered later, alone in his lab. Doubt crept in. Was he wrong? Was the coil too wild? George Westinghouse, his old ally, added pressure. AC was still strong, but Westinghouse's company faced new rivals, and Nikola's coil obsession worried him. Over coffee, Westinghouse was blunt. Wardenclyffe's a gamble, Tesla. Stick to AC. It's what keeps us afloat. Nikola nodded, but his heart sank. He'd given up AC royalties to save Westinghouse years ago, leaving himself broke. Now, his coil, the one thing he believed in, was called a mistake. He kept Wardenclyffe's secret from Westinghouse, working on it at night, but the guilt gnawed at him. Nikola's lab was lonelier than ever. George was loyal, but his other assistants had left, tired of late nights and no pay. Nikola didn't blame them. He worked alone, the coil's hum his only company. He barely slept, his thin frame wasting away. Meals were apples and crackers, eaten at his workbench. He walked New York streets at dawn, watching AC lights flicker, proud but hollow. Fame had faded, and friends were few. Letters from his mother, Juka, were his lifeline. "Keep your spark, Nico," she wrote. Nikola clung to her words, but doubt whispered louder. Wardenclyffe's progress slowed. Workers needed pay, and materials ran short. Nikola begged Morgan for more money, but Morgan was distracted, investing in Marconi's radio. "Radio's the future," Morgan said at a meeting, brushing Nikola off. Nikola's face burned. "My coil is more," he insisted. But Morgan walked away. Nikola returned to Long Island, staring at the half-built tower. Its steel frame gleamed, but it felt like a ghost. "I'll finish you," he promised, but his voice shook. A new blow came in 1902. A stock market dip hit Morgan and Westinghouse hard, and both cut funds. Nikola's lab faced eviction, and Wardenclyffe stalled. He fired half his workers, keeping only George and a few others. "We'll manage," he told them, but his smile was weak. At night, he tested smaller coils in his lab, pushing sparks to 10 feet, sending signals a mile. Each success was a flicker of hope, but it wasn't enough. The world wanted Marconi's dots and dashes, not Nikola's lightning. Nikola's health suffered. He caught a cold that lingered, his cough echoing in the lab. He ignored it, working through fevers, but his hands trembled. Doubt grew heavier. In Colorado, the coil had felt like truth. Signals across miles, power through the earth. Now, in New York, it felt like a dream slipping away. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, seeing his boyhood self in Smiljan, chasing sparks. Am I chasing shadows? He wondered. The thought scared him, but he pushed it down. No, he told himself, the coil is real. One day, a small win came. A science magazine asked for an article on Wardenclyffe. Nikola poured his heart into it, writing of a world where energy was free, where coils linked every home. The Gifford article ran, and a few readers sent letters, excited. "Keep going, Mr. Tesla," one wrote. Nikola smiled, tucking the letters away. But the magazine's editor added a note. "Fascinating, but impractical." Nikola's smile faded. Even his supporters doubted. Loneliness deepened. Nikola avoided parties where rich men laughed and women flirted. He felt out of place, his mind on coils, not small talk. He fed pigeons in the park, their soft coos calming him. "You don't judge," he told them, tossing crumbs. Back in his lab, he sketched Wardenclyffe's tower, bigger, stronger. If he could finish it, the world would see. But money was gone, and Morgan's silence was deafening. In 1903, disaster struck. Morgan pulled out completely, calling Wardenclyffe a fool's dream. Nikola begged, writing desperate letters. "Give me one more year." Morgan didn't reply. Westinghouse cut funds, too, needing cash for AC. Nikola's lab was seized for unpaid rent, and he moved his coils to a smaller space, a damp basement on Canal Street. Wardenclyffe's workers quit, and the tower stood unfinished, its steel rusting. Nikola visited one last time, touching the cold frame. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears in his eyes. Back in the basement, Nikola worked on. The new lab was cramped, the coil's sparks barely fitting. George stayed, unpaid but loyal. "Why keep going?" he asked one night, watching Nikola tweak a circuit. Nikola paused, his voice soft. "Because it's right. The coil will work, even if I don't see it." George nodded, moved. They tested. A small coil, sending a signal 2 miles. It was a spark of hope, but Nikola knew it wasn't enough. Doubt was a shadow he couldn't shake. Newspapers mocked him now, calling Wardenclyffe a white elephant. Marconi's radio grew, while Nikola's coils gathered dust. He wrote to his mother, hiding his struggles. "Wardenclyffe is close," he lied. Her reply was warm. "I believe in you, Nico." Nikola held the letter, his chest tight. He looked at his coil, silent in the dim light, and made a choice. One more push, he told himself. He'd find new investors, rebuild Wardenclyffe, prove the coil's truth. 1903 ended. Nikola faced his darkest hour. Money gone, tower stalled, fame faded. The world watched, but not with awe, with pity, doubt, scorn. Yet in his tiny lab, the coil still sparked, a faint blue promise. Nikola touched its wires, feeling his boyhood spark. "I'm not done," he whispered. Doubt was heavy, but his dream was heavier. Wardenclyffe wasn't dead, just sleeping. Nikola Tesla, alone but unbroken, would fight on. Chapter 8. A Spark Rekindled. In 1904, Nikola Tesla was a shadow of his former self. At 48, the once celebrated wizard of electricity was fading from the spotlight. His alternating current, AC systems, still lit cities, but his Tesla coil and Wardenclyffe tower dreams were crumbling. The tower, meant to send wireless power and signals worldwide, stood rusting on Long Island, abandoned by investors like J.P. Morgan. Nikola's tiny basement lab on Canal Street was a far cry from his old Houston street glory. Money was gone, fame was fading, and doubt weighed heavy. But a new spark was coming, one that would pull Nikola from the dark. The basement lab was dim and damp, its walls stained with watermarks. A single Tesla coil, smaller than his Colorado giants, sat on a rickety table surrounded by wires, capacitors, and dusty notebooks. Sparks still flew, but they felt lonely, like whispers in an empty room. Nikola, thinner than ever, worked alone, his suit patched, his hands shaky from too little food and sleep. His dark eyes, once bright, were tired, but they still burned with a stubborn fire. "The coil is right," he told himself, tweaking a circuit. "I just need a chance." New York was cruel that year. Newspapers mocked Nikola's failed Wardenclyffe, calling him a dreamer who'd lost his touch. Guglielmo Marconi's radio was the new king, sending messages across oceans while Nikola's coils gathered dust. Investors ignored his letters, and old allies like George Westinghouse were too busy with AC to care. Nikola ate bread and apples, saving coins for wire. He fed pigeons in the park, their soft coos his only comfort. "You believe in me," he told them, tossing crumbs. But inside doubt gnawed. Was he chasing a ghost? One grey morning, a knock came at the lab's door. Nikola, hunched over his coil, froze. He rarely had visitors. He opened the door to find a young woman, maybe 20, with bright eyes and a worn coat. "Mr. Tesla?" she asked, clutching a notebook. "I'm Anna. I read your article about Wardenclyffe. I think it's brilliant." Nikola blinked, surprised. Most people scoffed. "At Wardenclyffe now." "Come in," he said, his voice soft. Anna stepped inside, her eyes wide at the coil's faint sparks. "I'm studying science," she said. "Your coil, it could change everything. Why'd you stop?" Nikola's throat tightened. He told her the truth. Morgan's betrayal, the money troubles, the world's doubt. Anna listened, her face serious. "But you're not wrong," she said. "Wireless power, global signals, it's the future. You can't give up." Nikola smiled, a flicker of warmth in his chest. Anna's belief felt like a breeze in a stuffy room. "It's not so simple," he said. "I need funds, a lab, time." Anna grinned. "Then let's find them. I know people, students, professors. They'll listen." Anna was a spark Nikola hadn't expected. She was a student at Columbia University, sharp and fearless, with a knack for rallying people. She'd grown up reading about Nikola's electric magic and believed in his vision. Over tea, Nikola's only luxury, she shared her plan. "We'll show your coil to my science club. They've got connections, rich donors, engineers. If they see it work, they'll help." Nikola hesitated. He'd faced too many skeptics, too many failures. But Anna's energy was contagious. "All right," he said. "One more try." They worked together, rebuilding the coil for a demo. The basement was too small, so Anna borrowed a lecture hall at Columbia. Nikola was nervous. His last big show had been the Buffalo Fair years ago. But Anna kept him focused. She helped wind wires, polish the coil's metal sphere, and test circuits. Her hands were quick, her questions sharp. "How do you tune it?" she asked, watching sparks. Nikola explained, his voice alive for the first time in months. "Like a violin," he said. "The earth sings, and the coil listens." Anna laughed. "You're a poet, Mr. Tesla." The demo was set for a chilly November night. Nikola and Anna hauled the coil to the hall, a grand room with wooden seats and gas lamps. The science club was small but eager. 20 students, a few professors, and a rich donor named Mr. Clark, a quiet man with deep pockets. Nikola's heart pounded as he set up. The coil gleamed, but it was old, its sparks weaker than in Colorado. Anna squeezed his arm. "You've got this," she said. Nikola nodded, finding strength in her trust. The room filled and Nikola began. His voice, thin at first, grew steady. "My coil sends energy without wires," he said. "It can light homes, connect the world." He flipped the switch, and the coil hummed. Sparks flew, blue and sharp, stretching 5 feet. Glass tubes lit up, glowing across the stage. Nikola held one, walking through the sparks, untouched. "This is the future," he said. The crowd gasped, then cheered. Students clapped, professors leaned forward, and Mr. Clark's eyes widened. Anna beamed, whispering, "Told you." Questions came fast. "How far can it send power?" a student asked. "Miles," Nikola said, thinking of Colorado. "What's the cost?" a professor pressed. "Less than wires once built," Nikola answered. Mr. Clark stood, his voice calm. "Impressive, Tesla. Could this finish Wardenclyffe?" Nikola's heart leapt. "Yes," he said. "With funds, I can make it real." Clark nodded, promising to talk later. The room buzzed with excitement, and Nikola felt alive. The coil had spoken, and people listened. After the demo, Anna and Nikola sat in the empty hall, the coil quiet. "You did it," she said. "They believed you." Nikola shook his head. "You did it, Anna. You brought me back." She blushed, waving him off. "We're a team now. Let's save Wardenclyffe." Nikola smiled, his doubt fading. The spark had rekindled his own, like the boy in Smiljan who'd seen lightning in his cat's fur. He wasn't alone anymore. Clark kept his word. A week later, he visited the basement lab, bringing 2 engineers and a small check. Enough to pay rent and buy parts. "Show me more," Clark said. Nikola and Anna worked fast, building a stronger coil. They tested it in the basement, sending sparks 6 feet and signals a mile. Clark was impressed, promising more funds if they could scale up. "Wardenclyffe's possible," he said. Nikola's eyes shone. "It's more than possible, it's destiny." Anna brought more help. Her science club joined, students eager to work for free. They cleaned the lab, fixed circuits, and spread the word. A local paper ran a story. Tesla's comeback. Nikola winced at the question mark, but welcomed the attention. Letters arrived, some from old fans, others from new dreamers. "Don't give up," one read. Nikola pinned it to the wall, next to his mother's letters. Doubt still lingered, but hope was stronger. Nikola and Anna planned their next step. A bigger demo to win back Morgan or find new investors. They needed Wardenclyffe finished, its tower complete, its coil alive. Anna suggested a public show in Central Park, free for all. "Let the people see," she said. "They'll push the rich to pay." Nikola agreed, sketching a huge coil for the park. It would light hundreds of tubes, send signals miles, and prove wireless was real. "This is our chance," he told Anna. She nodded, her eyes fierce. "Let's make it loud." The work was hard. The basement was cramped and parts were scarce. Nikola sold his last AC patent, a painful choice, to buy copper. Anna scavenged glass tubes from old labs, her hands blistered but quick. They barely slept, fueled by tea and dreams. Nikola's cough worsened, his frame frail, but Anna's energy kept him going. "You're tougher than you look," she teased. Nikola laughed, a rare sound. "So are you." As 1904 ended, Nikola felt a shift. The coil sparked brighter, the lab hummed with life, and Anna's team filled the silence. Clark's funds grew, and rumours of the Central Park show spread. Marconi's radio was still king, but Nikola didn't care. His coil was more power, not just signals. Wardenclyffe's tower, rusting but proud, waited for its moment. Doubt was still there, a shadow in quiet moments, but Anna's spark had lit a fire. Nikola looked at his coil, its blue light, steady, and made a vow. "We'll finish this," he whispered. "The world will see." The Central Park demo was months away, but Nikola was ready to fight. With Anna by his side, the coil humming, and a new team believing, he felt his boyhood spark again. Wardenclyffe wasn't dead. It was waking. Nikola Tesla, battered but unbroken, was back. The world would watch, and this time he'd make them believe. Chapter 9. The Final Demonstration. In the spring of 1905, Nikola Tesla stood on the edge of his greatest moment. At 49, he was a worn but determined figure, his thin frame bent from years of struggle. His alternating current, AC systems, powered cities, but his Tesla coil and Wardenclyffe tower dreams had nearly broken him. The tower, meant to send wireless power and signals worldwide, was a rusting shell on Long Island, abandoned by investors. Yet a spark had returned, lit by Anna, a young scientist who believed in him. With her help, Nikola planned a bold public demonstration in Central Park to prove the coil's power and revive Wardenclyffe. This was his last chance to show the world. The basement lab on Canal Street was alive again. Nikola's Tesla coil, rebuilt with Anna's team of student volunteers, sparked fiercely, its blue lightning stretching 7 feet. The damp room buzzed with energy. Wires, capacitors, and glass tubes scattered on tables, notebooks filled with plans. Nikola, his suit patched but clean, worked beside Anna, whose quick hands and bright eyes kept the team moving. Their goal was simple but huge, a free show in Central Park to light hundreds of tubes wirelessly and send signals miles away. If it worked, investors like Mr. Clark, and maybe even J.P. Morgan, would fund Wardenclyffe's completion. The team had grown. Anna's Science Club, a dozen students from Columbia, worked for free, their laughter filling the lab. They polished, coils, tested circuits, and scavenged parts from junkyards. Nikola, once lonely, felt warmed by their chatter. "You're like my mother," he told Anna, smiling. "She fixed everything." Anna grinned. "Then let's fix Wardenclyffe." They built a massive coil for the park, 10 feet tall, with a gleaming metal sphere. It was a beast, heavy and wild, but Nikola tuned it like a song, its sparks steady and strong. Money was tight. Clark's funds paid for copper and steel, but every test cost more. Nikola sold his last AC patent, a stab to his heart, to buy glass, tubes. Anna begged professors for old equipment, her coat torn from climbing fences. "We're close," she told Nikola, her hands blistered. He nodded, his cough worse, but his spirit high. The team worked late, fueled by tea and dreams. Central Park was their stage, and they'd make it unforgettable. The demo was set for May 15th, a warm Sunday when New Yorkers would flood the park. Anna spread the word, nailing posters to trees. "Tesla's Electric Wonder Free Show." Newspapers, curious about Nikola's comeback, ran stories. "Can the wizard strike again?" one asked. Nikola winced but welcomed the buzz. Crowds meant pressure, and pressure meant investors. Clark promised to bring rich friends, and Anna hinted Morgan might show. "This is it," Nikola told his team. "We show them the future." Building the demo was tough. The coil was too big for the basement, so they tested it in an empty lot nearby. Sparks lighting the night. One test sent a signal 3 miles, a record. Another lit 200 tubes glowing like stars. But the coil was wild. Sparks scorched grass, and a capacitor blew, nearly hitting a student. Nikola added safety switches, his hands steady despite his fear. "We can't fail," he told Anna. She nodded, her face fierce. "We won't." The park setup was a race. On May 14th, Nikola and the team hauled the coil to Central Park, a grassy field near the lake. They built a wooden platform, rigged with wires and tubes, the coil at its centre. Anna's students hung signs and set up receivers a mile away, ready to catch signals. Nikola checked every wire, his cough echoing in the quiet dawn. The coil hummed softly, its metal sphere glinting in the sun. "It's ready," he whispered, half to himself. Anna squeezed his arm. "So are you." May 15th dawned bright. By noon, Central Park was packed. Families, kids, scientists, and rich men in stiff hats. Nikola spotted Clark in the crowd, and his heart skipped. Morgan, stern but curious. Reporters scribbled, and Anna's students handed out flyers. The platform gleamed, tubes lined up like soldiers. Nikola, in a borrowed suit, felt his nerves flare. He'd faced crowds before, Buffalo, London, but this was different. Wardenclyffe's fate hung on today. Anna stood by him, her voice low. "You've got this, Mr. Tesla. Show them the spark." Nikola nodded, finding strength in her eyes. At 2 o'clock, he stepped onto the platform. The crowd hushed, thousands of faces watching. Nikola's voice, thin but clear, carried over the field. "My coil is more than sparks," he said. "It's a new world, power without wires, messages across oceans." He gestured to the coil, its sphere shining. "Watch!" He flipped the switch, and the coil roared to life. Sparks flew, blue and fierce, stretching 10 feet. The crowd gasped as 300 tubes lit up, glowing red, white, blue, some 50 feet away, no wires needed. Kids cheered, adults clapped, and Nikola walked through the sparks, holding a glowing tube. "This is wireless power," he said, his voice strong. "This is the future." The signal test came next. Nikola nodded to Anna, who stood a mile away with a receiver. He sent a pulse, dot, 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 and the receiver's light blinked, clear as day. A student ran back, shouting, "It worked!" The crowd roared, hats flying. Nikola's heart soared. He pushed the coil harder, lighting more tubes, sending sparks 12 feet. The air buzzed, the ground hummed, and for a moment Nikola felt like the boy in Smiljan, chasing lightning. Morgan's face softened. Clark clapped and reporters scribbled wildly. But then a crack. The coil's main capacitor sparked, smoke rising. Nikola cut the power, his heart pounding. The crowd murmured, nervous. Anna rushed to his side, her voice calm. "It's okay." They saw enough. Nikola nodded, forcing a smile. The demo wasn't perfect, but it was alive. The coil had spoken, and the world had listened. That night, The park emptied, but Nikola stayed, sitting by the coil. Anna joined him, her coat dusty. "You did it," she said. "They loved it." Nikola shook his head. "The capacitor failed. It wasn't enough." Anna laughed. "You lit up the park, sent signals a mile. That's plenty." Nikola smiled, her warmth easing his doubt. Clark approached, his face bright. "My friends are in," he said. "We'll fund Wardenclyffe, enough to start again." Nikola's eyes widened. "Thank you," he whispered. Morgan, passing by, paused. "Good show, Tesla," he said, his voice gruff. "We'll talk." It wasn't a promise, but it was hope. Newspapers exploded. "Tesla's triumph!" one shouted. "Wireless Wonderlights Park!" another cried. Letters flooded the lab, from kids to scientists begging for more. A few investors sent checks, small but real. Nikola and Anna moved the coil back to Canal Street, planning Wardenclyffe's revival. Clark's funds paid workers to fix the towers. Frame and Anna's team grew, students buzzing with ideas. Nikola's cough lingered, his body weak, but his spirit was strong. "We're close," he told Anna, sketching a new coil for Wardenclyffe. The demo wasn't perfect, but it was enough. It showed the coil's truth. Wireless power, signals through the earth. Marconi's radio was still king, but Nikola's vision was bigger. Wardenclyffe's tower, once a ghost, was waking. Nikola knew challenges remained, money, skeptics, his own limits. But for now, he'd won. The world had seen his spark, and they believed. As summer began, Nikola stood in his lab, the coil sparking softly. Anna worked nearby, her laughter bright. The team hummed around them, a family of dreamers. Nikola touched the coil, its hum steady, and thought of his mother Juka, who'd believed in his spark. "We did it," he whispered half to her. Doubt was gone, replaced by fire. Wardenclyffe would rise, the coil would sing, and the world would change. Nikola Tesla, battered but bold, was ready for the final push. Chapter 10. A Legacy Illuminated. In the summer of 1905, Nikola Tesla stood taller than he had in years. At 49, he was still thin, his face lined from struggle, but his eyes burned with hope. The Central Park demonstration had been a triumph. His Tesla Coil lit hundreds of tubes wirelessly, sent signals a mile, and won cheers from thousands. Anna, the young scientist who'd rekindled his spark, stood by him, her team of students buzzing with energy. Investors, led by Mr. Clark, promised funds to revive Wardenclyffe Tower. The giant coil meant to power the world without wires. Nikola's dream was alive, but the road ahead was steep. This was his moment to cement his legacy, to show the world what his coil could do. The Canal Street lab was a hive of work. The Tesla coil, patched but powerful, sparked blue lightning. Its hum was a steady heartbeat. Tables overflowed with wires, capacitors, and glass tubes glowing in eerie colours. Nikola, his suit worn but neat, moved with purpose, tweaking circuits beside Anna and her Columbia University students. Their laughter filled the damp basement, chasing away years of loneliness. "We're building the future," Nikola told them, his voice strong despite his lingering cough. Anna grinned, winding copper wire, "And it's going to shine." Wardenclyffe was the goal, The tower on Long Island, half-built and rusting, was Nikola's dream. A massive Tesla coil to send power and signals globally, free for all. Clark's funds restarted work, and workers returned to Shoreham, hammering steel and laying bricks. Nikola visited often, his heart lifting as the tower's frame gleamed anew. "It's waking," he told Anna, touching the cold metal. Shi nodded, her eyes fierce. "Let's make it sing." They planned a final test, a smaller demo at Wardenclyffe to prove the tower could power a nearby village wirelessly. If it worked, Clark's investors, and maybe J.P. Morgan, would fund its completion. The lab buzzed with preparation. Nikola designed a new coil for Wardenclyffe, smaller than the tower's final version, but strong enough to light a village. Anna's team built it, their hands quick despite blisters. "This one's a beast," a student said, watching sparks hit 8 feet. Nikola smiled. "It's a start." They tested signals, sending pulses 5 miles and lit 200 tubes, without wires. Each success was a step toward Wardenclyffe's promise. But challenges loomed. Money was tight, parts were scarce, and the world still loved Marconi's radio over Nikola's coils. Nikola's health worried Anna. His cough worsened, his frame frail from years of bread and apple meals. "Rest, Mr. Tesla," she urged, but he waved her off. "The coil needs me." She slipped him soup, pretending it was hers, and he ate, too tired to argue. Her care reminded him of his mother Juka, whose letters still warmed his heart. "You're my spark," he told Anna one night, his voice soft. She blushed, laughing. "And you're mine." The Wardenclyffe test was set for August 15th, a date chosen to catch summer crowds and investors. Anna spread the word, posting flyers across New Clark's friends, promised to bring rich donors, and a rumour swirled that Morgan might attend. Newspapers, curious about Nikola's comeback, ran stories. Tesla's last stand? Nikola ignored the doubt, focusing on the coil. "This isn't my last stand," he told Anna. "It's my first victory." Building the test was grueling. The new coil was heavy, needing a wagon to haul it to Long Island. Nikola and the team worked in the lab and at Wardenclyffe, wiring circuits and grounding rods deep into the earth. One test sparked a small fire, quickly doused, but it shook Nikola. "We can't fail," he told Anna, his hands trembling. She squeezed his arm. "We won't." They added safety switches and tested again, lighting a field of tubes a mile away. The signal reached 6 miles, a record. Nikola clapped, his cough drowned by the coil's hum. "It's ready," he said. August 15th dawned clear, the Long Island sky wide and blue. Wardenclyffe's tower loomed over a grassy field, its steel frame polished, its brick lab bustling. Nikola's team set up the coil on a platform, surrounded by 300 glass tubes and a receiver 2 miles away in a small village. Crowds gathered. Farmers, city folk, scientists and Clark's investors in stiff suits. Nikola spotted Morgan in the back, his face unreadable. Reporters scribbled, and Anna's students handed out flyers. "Tesla's wireless future." Nikola, in a borrowed suit, felt his heart race. This was it, Wardenclyffe's moment. At noon, Nikola stepped onto the platform. The crowd hushed, hundreds of eyes on him. His voice, weak from coughing, grew strong. "My coil is freedom," he said. It sends power and signals through the earth. No wires needed. Today, we light a village." He pointed to the distant village, its lights off. "Watch!" He flipped the switch, and the coil roared. Sparks flew, 10 feet of blue lightning, shaking the air. Tubes lit up, glowing across the field, red, white, blue, some 100 feet away. The crowd gasped, then cheered, kids jumping, adults clapping. Nikola signalled Anna Sheffield, a student with a receiver, ran to the village shouting, "It worked!" A light blinked, dot, dot, dot. The village's lights flickered on, faintly, but real, powered wirelessly. The crowd roared, hats flying. Nikola pushed the coil, sending sparks 12 feet, lighting more tubes. The receiver caught another signal, clear and strong. Anna grinned from the crowd, her eyes shining. Nikola held a glowing tube, walking through the sparks, untouched. "This is the future," he shouted. "Power for all." The cheers were deafening, drowning his cough. Morgan clapped, his face surprised. Clark beamed, whispering to his friends. Reporters wrote fast, and the crowd chanted, "Tesla! Tesla!" The coil's hum faded as Nikola cut the power, the tubes dimming. A capacitor smoked, but no fire came. The demo was done, and it was perfect. Nikola stood, breathless, his heart full. He'd done it. Wardenclyffe was alive. That night the field emptied, but Nikola stayed, sitting by the coil. Anna joined, him, her coat dusty. "You changed the world," she said. Nikola shook his head. "We did." She laughed, hugging him, careful of his frail frame. Clark approached, his smile wide. "We'll fund the tower, full completion." Nikola's eyes teared. "Thank you," he whispered. Morgan paused nearby, nodding. "Good work, Tesla. I'll consider it." It was enough, a crack in his wall. Newspapers exploded. Tesla's wireless triumph. "The future is here." Funds poured in. Clark's millions, smaller checks from fans. Workers swarmed Wardenclyffe, finishing the tower by 1906. Nikola and Anna tested it, powering villages, sending signals to Europe. Marconi's radio faded. Nikola's coils rose. But Nikola knew the full dream, free global power, would take decades, maybe centuries. His health failed, his cough a constant shadow. He passed Wardenclyffe to Anna, who vowed to carry on. 1943, at 86, Nikola died quietly, his lab dark. But his legacy lived. The coil's principles sparked radio, TV, Wi-Fi, wireless charging, threads of his dream woven into the world. Wardenclyffe, preserved as a museum, inspired generations. Anna, old but fierce, taught students Nikola's spark, her eyes bright with his memory. In that 1905 field, Nikola hadn't seen it all, but he'd felt it. The coil's hum, the crowd's cheers, Anna's trust, they were enough. He'd lit the world not with wires but with ideas. His legacy, like his sparks, would never fade.